started like any other business trip, with a flight to a new city, a purpose, and an Airbnb reservation for a place to stay. The house I found was a charming little cottage that looked like something from a postcard. It was located on the outskirts of town and was surprisingly affordable, which was a pleasant surprise for my wallet. The first day, I was passed without incident. I attended my meetings and explored the town, and when night fell, I returned to the cozy Airbnb. Everything seemed perfectly normal, and I drifted to sleep in the comfortable bed, exhaustion weighing down my eyelids. However, my peaceful slumber was soon disrupted by strange noises. I awoke to tapping and knocking on the windows, doors, and walls. It was as if someone was trying to get my attention, but there was an eerie silence when I called, "Who's there?" My heart raced as I realized there was no response, just the continued tapping and knocking. I reached for my phone to call the host, but there was no signal. Panic set in as I contemplated whether to investigate or stay in my room. The idea of leaving the house in the dead of night crossed my mind, but I didn't even know the way back to the city. As the hours passed, I sat in my bed, wide awake, listening to the strange sounds that seemed to come from every direction. It felt like the cottage walls held secrets I couldn't comprehend. With each mysterious noise, my unease grew. Morning couldn't have come sooner. The light of day brought a sense of safety, and I hesitantly decided to venture outside. The property was serene, with nothing to suggest that the previous night's events had occurred. But the uneasiness still lingered, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That second night was even worse. I went to bed with a sense of dread, and around midnight, I was woken up by the unmistakable sound of footsteps inside the house. There was no mistaking it. Someone was walking around, and I was alone. Terror seized me as I lay there, listening to the footsteps getting closer and fading away. It was as if an intruder was purposefully taunting me, testing my nerves. I couldn't take it any longer. I grabbed my phone and called the police, trying to explain the bizarre events that had transpired over the past 2 nights. The dispatcher assured me that an officer was on the way. It felt like an eternity as I sat in that room, anxiety clawing at my chest, waiting for help to arrive. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant noise, made me more and more apprehensive. Finally, the police arrived, and they searched the house from top to bottom. To my shock, they found nothing out of the ordinary, no signs of a break-in, no intruders. I was left with an overwhelming sense of disbelief and terror. I couldn't stay there another night, not knowing what was happening, not knowing who or what was responsible for the terrifying experiences. I left immediately, packing my bags hastily and returning to the airport. The sense of relief I felt when I boarded the plane was immeasurable. I couldn't get that Airbnb house out of my mind, and the inexplicable events haunted my thoughts. But it wasn't over yet. As I settled into my airplane seat, I looked out the window and saw the distant silhouette of the cottage. It was impossible, but I could swear I saw a figure tapping and knocking in one of the windows as if bidding me farewell. My mind raced, knowing I had to escape that place as quickly as possible. The plane took off, and I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Yet, the memory of those mysterious sounds, the inexplicable footsteps, and the paralyzing fear that took hold of me on those nights still sends shivers down my spine. It was a trip I would never forget, a journey into the unknown that left me with more questions than answers, and a lingering feeling that I had escaped something genuinely inexplicable. In search of a quiet escape from the bustling city, I found the perfect Airbnb listing, a charming wood cabin deep within the serene woods. The photos showed a cozy interior, and the reviews spoke highly of its tranquility. With a quick reservation, our one-night getaway was set. The drive to the cabin was nothing short of picturesque. The winding roads meandered through lush forests and rolling hills, and the anticipation built as we left the city behind, yearning for a day of rest and relaxation. As the sun descended below the horizon, we arrived at our woodland retreat. The cabin stood before us, a vision of rustic beauty, casting a warm, golden hue over the landscape. Upon our arrival, the cabin appeared as inviting as it had in the pictures. It was everything we had hoped for, complete with a stone fireplace and a spacious wooden deck that overlooked the dense woods. We settled in, savoring the peaceful ambiance as the evening set in. However, as the night deepened and the forest enveloped us in darkness, the tranquility we sought began unraveling. It started with a strange knock on the cabin's wooden door. My heart skipped a beat as I approached the door, not knowing what to expect. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly opened it. What lay on the doorstep was a small, unassuming box with an eerie message scrawled on it. "Open me." Curiosity got the better of me, and I gingerly lifted the box lid. A handwritten letter was inside, nestled among folds of black tissue paper. I pulled it out, and the message it bore sent shivers down my spine. The letter, written in trembling script, read, "I see you." The words struck a chord of fear deep within us. We couldn't fathom who might have left this chilling note in nowhere. Panic set in as we tried to rationalize the situation. Was it a prank? A cruel joke? We had heard stories of cabin fever, but this was taking it too far. We locked the doors, drew the curtains, and convinced ourselves it was nothing more than a bizarre occurrence. But as the night wore on, unease settled in like an unwelcome guest. The strange note had cast a shadow over our retreat. We found it impossible to sleep, haunted by the unsettling letter. Our surroundings seemed to close in on us, and a sense of foreboding seeped into every cabin corner. And then, out of the inky darkness, we saw a black figure outside the cabin window. It watched us, its presence ominous and malevolent. We called out in panic, "Who's there? This isn't funny!" But the figure vanished into the night, leaving a sense of dread that hung heavy in the air. The silence that followed was oppressive, broken only by the distant sounds of the forest. We waited, hearts pounding, each moment stretching like an eternity. It wasn't long before the figure returned inside the cabin with us. Its presence was suffocating, and we could feel it moving around. It started to tap on the window, its long, bony fingers producing a bone-chilling rhythm. The sound was relentless, growing louder and more frenzied with each passing moment. We were trapped, our fear mounting with each rhythmic tap on the window pane. We had no choice but to huddle together, cowering in the corner of the cabin. The night felt endless, every knock on the walls a reminder of our vulnerability. The darkness was relentless, and we were caught in a living nightmare. Finally, dawn's first light began filtering through the cabin's windows. The figure seemed to recede with the coming day, its presence waning. We waited in terrified anticipation for the moment we could escape the cabin. As soon as the morning sun bathed the forest in warm light, we fled from the cabin, leaving behind the haunting memories of that dreadful night. The tranquility we had initially sought was shattered, replaced by a haunting memory that would forever mark our one-night vacation. We couldn't explain what had happened, but we knew we had encountered something beyond our comprehension. This presence had left us with a sense of unease and a vacation we would never forget. The weekend had arrived, marked by a blend of excitement and anticipation. I had ventured to a different city for a crucial swimming competition, and to maximize my comfort, I chose to rent a house through Airbnb. The property I had selected seemed like the perfect haven. A cozy, well-maintained home, nestled in a serene neighborhood, conveniently close to the competition venue. It promised a peaceful retreat to recharge and prepare for the challenges ahead. Upon my arrival, the house stood just as it had in the listing, inviting, well-furnished, and ready to provide a relaxing environment. I settled in, meticulously reviewing my preparations, and retired to bed with optimism and determination. I was eager to give it my all. Tomorrow was the big day. The day of the competition surpassed even my wildest expectations. I performed at my absolute best, securing victory in my event. The other contestants and I decided to celebrate our achievements. As the night unfolded, we shared stories, laughter, and the sweet taste of success. It was a night of camaraderie and collective joy. This experience would linger vividly in my memory for years to come. As I strolled back to the house in the late hours of the night, my heart was still abuzz with the excitement of my win. But the jubilation was short-lived, as a sight outside the house sent an eerie shiver down my spine. Two shadowy figures were standing in front of the house, their gaze fixed upon it with a disconcerting intensity. My heart skipped a beat, and anxiety surged within me. I had no knowledge of these men, their intentions, or the reason for their presence, and their unnerving stance left me deeply unsettled. Quickly, I withdrew to the obscurity of the surrounding shadows, my heart pounding with each second that passed. It felt like an eternity as I crouched behind a nearby tree, watching those enigmatic figures with bated breath. I hoped fervently that they would soon depart. Eventually, they did, turning away and disappearing into the darkness. I heaved a sigh of relief, yet the disquieting feeling that had taken root in my heart lingered. Back inside the house, I secured every possible entry point, locking doors and windows. I tried to reason that it was a bizarre coincidence or some harmless misunderstanding. Still, I couldn't shake the sensation of being observed. My attempts at getting some rest were futile. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustle of leaves in the breeze seemed magnified, each sound more menacing than the last. The night was relentless, tossing and turning, a battle between my racing imagination and my exhausted body. Then, in the heart of the night, a deafening crash shattered the tranquility. I was startled awake, and my heart raced as I hurriedly sought the source of the noise. It led me to a terrifying scene. A shattered window and a bloodied stone lay on the floor, a menacing message scrawled upon it. "Get out! This is my house!" Fear surged through me, my mind reeling in confusion and terror. Who had trespassed into the house, and what did that cryptic message signify? Evidently danger loomed, and my instincts urged me to flee. I wasted no time, grabbing my belongings and leaving behind the untouched victory cake, symbolizing my earlier elation. I made a hasty retreat from the house. The night outside was a suffocating shroud of darkness, and I dared not glance back. The heavy sense of dread trailed me as I walked briskly through the deserted streets. It was unmistakable that I needed to distance myself from that menacing house and the inscrutable presence that had invaded it. Eventually, I found refuge in a nearby hotel, where I checked in and spent the rest of the night, my senses on high alert. Sleep was elusive as my mind revisited the harrowing events of the night, leaving me with a disconcerting memory that would linger for years to come. My Airbnb rental, which had begun with promise and optimism, had transformed into a nightmarish ordeal I would never forget.